So this is not typically a channel where I review film, and that's probably not going to change just because I think there's enough people doing that on YouTube that I just don't feel the need to contribute. But with that being said, 2019 was an exceptional year for film, and I just felt the need to put my thoughts out there in a quick video, just so I can say I did that and move on with my life. And so without further ado, let's start with my least favorite movie of the year. Alright, so before anyone gets upset, keep in mind that I only saw a small handful of films this year because I don't like to waste my time and money, so I only really go to see things that I think I'm going to enjoy. So as a result, The Rise of Skywalker is probably not the worst film of the year, but it is the worst thing that I saw. And that is because it is a mess. It is a mess, but that is not completely J.J. Abrams' fault. On one hand, he's trying desperately to clean up after what Rian Johnson did to his plot lines. And on the other hand, he's trying to give a meaningful conclusion to a trilogy that really doesn't even feel like it started until this movie. So it is exhausting to watch because it is just moving from scene to scene without really letting you feel the emotional weight of anything. And on top of that, the movie takes all these risks but still manages to feel empty and contrived because it doesn't commit to any of them. The biggest positives I can give it are John Williams' score. Adam Driver as Kylo Ren is still great, although perhaps a bit wasted as a character. And J.J. Abrams has always been good at cinematography and creating a good action set piece. So all of that was enjoyable, but overall it was a bit disappointing and very frustrating. I'm going to give it a 5.5 out of 10. Next we have Spider-Man Far From Home, which although enjoyable I think is one of the weaker additions to the MCU, just because the pacing and the tone seems a bit off to me. It's just that sometimes it wants to be a teen comedy, and other times it wants to have like an emotional impact, and I don't think it can have it both ways all the time. And there's also the fact that Mysterio doesn't get revealed to be the villain until about halfway through the movie, and the plot really can't get started until then, so we're kind of just goofing around for a while. But besides that, Jake Gyllenhaal is a masterclass in acting. I'm glad he was Mysterio. Tom Holland is still fun as Spider-Man. And that one scene, I don't even have to describe it to you, is one of the best scenes in any Marvel movie. And so with all that being said, it gets a 6. The new Invader Zim movie is fun and enjoyable, albeit a little forgettable. All I can really say is that it stays true to the early 2000s cartoon. Overall, I'm feeling a 6.5 out of 10. Jordan Peele's Us is another interesting original idea that has a nice blend of comedy and horror to it, but it did start to lose me after the first act and a half. I was enjoying it while it was a self-contained story about a family's doppelgangers, but once he goes much larger with the scale, I think the pacing gets a bit iffy. I think Jordan Peele bites off a little more than he can chew with trying to explain himself. So overall, it's a good idea that's well acted, but it gets bogged down by its final act, I think. Overall, it's a 6.5 out of 10. El Camino, a movie that didn't need to exist in the Breaking Bad universe, but I'm glad it does, because Vince Gilligan clearly wasn't looking for a cash grab. He clearly cares for these characters in the same way that Breaking Bad fans do, and because of that, he's able to write something that feels meaningful and like a genuine conclusion to Jesse Pinkman's arc. And although it feels like just a long Breaking Bad episode, I'm okay with that, because I like Breaking Bad. 7 out of 10. Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is an incredibly well-acted film by Leonardo DiCaprio and Brad Pitt. They play well off each other in every scene, and every scene that they're apart, they shine by themselves. And I just wish those scenes were connected in a more cohesive and meaningful way, because this is clearly not a plot-driven movie. It's more Tarantino's love letter to 60s Hollywood, and I'm fine with that. I just wish there was more of a clear through line that brought us to that third act, because that is perhaps the most Tarantino thing I've ever seen, and it would have benefited from that. But overall, it's a 7 out of 10. Endgame is surprisingly successful in being a proper conclusion to a 23-movie arc, and that is something to praise by itself. And that is thanks to a stellar final act that contains a great climatic battle and good conclusions to both Captain America and Tony Stark's character arcs. But, with a 3.5-hour movie, there are pacing issues that mainly come in the first act and some of the time travel antics. And with weighing that in, it's a 7.5 out of 10. Also at a 7.5 out of 10 is John Wick Chapter 3, which, like the other two movies, is some of the best action you will see all year. It is raw, gritty, and that's because Keanu Reeves is still dedicated to doing as much as he can without studio magic, and it makes for some next-level stuff and some amazing action set pieces. It only loses me for a little bit when John Wick leaves New York to go abroad. I just thought some of those scenes were a little too tangential to everything else, but besides that, it's just a fun watch. Toy Story 4 is a surprisingly meaningful and heartfelt addition to the Toy Story series. It manages to tell a nice, small, self-contained story while also tackling big issues like existentialism and Woody's purpose outside of being a child's toy. And with that being said, it strikes this nice balance between, of course, being a kids' movie, but also catering to the people that saw the first one in the 90s, and making sure that it emotionally resonates with those people. And I found it impressive that it did manage to strike that balance fairly well. So it's an 8 out of 10. Joker, another solid watch. I think Joaquin Phoenix put on an excellent performance. I like that the movie remains fairly accessible and is for large audiences, but it does not shy away from gritty moments and heartbreaking paths that this character takes. And overall, I think my only qualm with it is that some of its themes are a bit in your face without much subtlety, but besides that, I enjoyed it. 8 out of 10. The Irishman. Heard a lot of things going into this about how it drags and it's 3.5 hours long, but you know what? I really didn't feel that runtime at all watching this. I really enjoyed it. And I think what people need to understand is that this is not Scorsese going for another Goodfellas or The Departed. This is its own thing completely. In fact, it's trying to de-glamorize the criminal underworld and show that these are not people to be idolized. I mean, the real conclusion of this movie is it's not a shootout, it's not this big climax, it's watching these people on the decline, watching them have to live with this on their conscience as they die out and pass away. And that in itself is something heavy that a lot of these movies don't try to tackle. And I haven't even mentioned the performances from Pesci, De Niro, and Pacino, which are of course great. So 8.5 out of 10. Parasite, like Joker, is a movie that I applaud for, on one hand, being very accessible. It's a movie that anyone can sit down and enjoy just because it's a fun story. But below that surface are these discussions of class divide and classism, and on top of that, what elevates those themes is this masterful blend of tone. This movie switches from anxiety-inducing scenes to moments of comedy like it's nothing. And you would think it's jarring, but it's not. It works very well. And overall, it's another 8.5. Marriage Story is proof that you don't need bells and whistles to make an above-average movie. You just need a good script and versatile actors, because that's all this is. It's a simple story of two people working through a divorce, but it gets elevated to a ridiculous level by Adam Driver and Scarlett Johansson, who put on two of the best performances of the entire year. I mean, the way they take simple plot points and turn them into moments of pure heartbreak is amazing. And like Parasite, there's an excellent balance of tone. There are these great moments of comedy, and they never get in the way of the real emotional stuff. It knows when to take itself seriously. And it's a well-executed movie. 9 out of 10. Lastly, we have my favorite film of the year, The Lighthouse by Roger Edgars. And really, it's just the simple story of two people spiraling downward into madness. But Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe's performances, Roger Edgars' editing choices, the sound design, everything contributes to the serious feeling of anxiety throughout the film, and your eyes just can't leave the screen. It's truly captivating, and I still can't fully explain everything that makes me love this movie, but the symbolism and all the aesthetic choices really just contribute to something that I feel is special, and a big takeaway from 2019. I'm going to give it a 9 out of 10. And so that's what I saw. Those are my thoughts. I openly invite yours in the comments below, and maybe what you're anticipating for 2020. Maybe I'll see it myself, and we'll be doing this again next year. And if you feel like it, subscribe. Otherwise, that about does it.